Why everyone there's a quiet revolution that begins every evening, and most people sleep right through it. But the truth is, what happens during those silent hours, behind closed eyes, defines what we become when we're awake. Whether you're a scientist pushing the boundaries of discovery, an entrepreneur building a company from scratch, or a parent navigating the beautiful chaos of life, sleep isn't a pause from productivity, it's the engine that powers it. Most of the progress we've made in the last century, in medicine, in education, in productivity, has one thing in common. It required people who were well enough, focused enough, and clear, minded enough to think deeply and solve problems. And none of that is possible without sleep. Not occasionally, not when it's convenient, but every night. Sleep is not a reward you earn after hard work. It's the condition that allows that work to happen in the first place. The way we talk about sleep in modern life betrays how little we respect it. We use phrases like "I'll sleep when I'm dead" or "burning the midnight oil" as though lack of rest is a badge of honor. But every credible study we have on cognitive performance, immune strength, memory retention, creativity, emotional regulation, and long-term health tells us the same thing. Sleep is non-negotiable. The cost of neglecting it doesn't show up all at once, but it accumulates in ways that eventually impact everything. When someone says they're too busy to sleep, it's like hearing someone say they're too busy to charge their phone. Except it's not their phone. It's their brain, their body, their decision-making engine. And unlike a phone, you can't just swap it out when the battery dies. Sleep isn't something you can catch up on during the weekend either. You can't reverse, engineer focus, energy, or resilience on demand. They have to be built, and sleep is the foundation they rest on. Consider how sleep affects learning. It's not just about getting through the day with less yawning. It's about encoding new information, connecting ideas, and turning short-term memory into long-term knowledge. When you sleep, your brain doesn't turn off, it goes to work. It cleans out toxins, repairs cells, and processes the events of the day. It prunes unnecessary connections and strengthens the ones that matter. That's why a good night's sleep can make a problem feel clearer, a decision more obvious, a challenge less overwhelming. But the benefits go far beyond the mind. Sleep impacts your metabolism, your immune system, your cardiovascular health. When you sleep less than 6 hours a night consistently, your risk for heart disease, stroke, and diabetes increases dramatically. And the frightening part is, many people don't even realize how impaired they are when sleep deprived. They've normalized the fog, the fatigue, the low patience threshold. It's only after consistent, quality sleep returns that people remember what sharpness really feels like. This isn't about perfection. Everyone has late nights now and then. Life doesn't always move on a neat schedule, but that's all the more reason to treat sleep as a priority, not an afterthought. You don't need to aim for perfection. You just need to aim for consistency. Going to bed and waking up at roughly the same time. Getting exposure to natural light in the morning to reset your circadian rhythm. Keeping your bedroom cool and dark. Avoiding caffeine too late in the day. These aren't difficult changes, they just require a shift in mindset from viewing sleep as optional to viewing it as essential. If a pill existed that could improve your memory, stabilize your mood, strengthen your immune system, enhance your creativity, and increase your life's banal with no negative side effects, we'd consider it a miracle. But that pill already exists. It's called sleep. And unlike many miracle claims, this one is backed by decades of peer-reviewed research. For leaders, sleep is strategy. For students, it's their edge. For parents, it's the energy they bring to their families. And for all of us, it's the baseline for how well we'll live, not just how long. One of the most effective things any of us can do for our health, our thinking, and our relationships doesn't require a subscription or a gym membership. It requires discipline to make room for recovery, even in a culture that often praises pushing through exhaustion. There's a future where people understand this better, where sleep is not stigmatized or sacrificed, but supported and protected. Where schools, workplaces, and homes are designed with rest in mind, not as a weakness, but as a strength multiplier. And the people who lead in that future will not just be the hardest working, they'll be the ones who are most clear, headed, emotionally steady, and deeply rested. So the next time you're tempted to cut your sleep short to get more done, ask yourself if you're really gaining anything, or just borrowing time with interest. Because in the end, sleep isn't what gets in the way of progress. It's what makes progress possible. Every system in the body, every hormone, every metabolic signal, every mental function follows a rhythm. These rhythms aren't random. They're governed by signals that have evolved over thousands of years to respond to patterns in the natural world, the most important of which is light. Long before there were alarms or screens or artificial lighting, light from the sun told our brains when to wake up, when to focus, and when to rest. That simple daily cue, sunrise and sunset, was the clock. And it still is. We've just gotten very good at ignoring it. What happens when we disregard light cues? The system begins to drift. Sleep becomes harder, mornings feel more jarring, energy becomes less predictable, and focus takes more effort. People often assume this is a sign of stress or aging or just the demands of a busy schedule. But very often, it's biology out of rhythm, and restoring that rhythm doesn't take complex tools or dramatic change. It just requires aligning more closely with what the brain already expects. When you wake up in the morning and step outside into natural sunlight, especially in the first hour of the day, you are giving your brain the clearest possible message: it's time to be alert. That light enters through the eyes, and it's not just about seeing clearly. It's about signaling your internal clock that the day has begun. That one action, repeated daily, does more than any cup of coffee or productivity hack. It resets the circadian rhythm, lowers stress hormones, and regulates sleep, inducing chemicals like melatonin later in the day. The timing matters. Waiting until noon to get light exposure isn't the same. The window right after waking is critical because it sets a cascade of biological responses that affect the next 24 hours. Miss that window, and everything else becomes harder: concentration, physical energy, even digestion. And the body starts relying on less reliable cues, like screens or caffeine, which only compound the problem over time. Equally important is how we wind down in the evening. Artificial light, especially the kind emitted by phones, tablets, and computers, tricks the brain into thinking the day isn't over. Blue light suppresses melatonin, the hormone that makes us feel sleepy and tells the body it's time to rest. And even though we may eventually fall asleep, the depth and quality of that sleep is often compromised. We wake up feeling like we barely slept, even if we technically got the hours in. That's the difference between sleep quantity and sleep quality. And light has a lot to do with both. Some of the most effective changes people can make don't involve changing their entire lifestyle, just adjusting their exposure to light, getting sunlight in the morning, dimming lights in the house after sunset, using warmer tones in the evening, reducing screen time an hour before bed. These are small shifts, but they have exponential benefits. They train the brain to know when to be alert and when to slow down. And over time, that builds a cycle that is self-reinforcing. The technology we've built, LED lights, streaming platforms, smartphones, has many benefits, but it also extends the day far beyond what our biology is prepared for. We've engineered an environment that's available 24/7, but our internal systems haven't evolved to operate that way. They still depend on the basic cues: bright light in the morning, darkness at night, and consistency in between. Ignoring that doesn't just mean worse sleep. It leads to mood instability, weight gain, lower immune function, and reduced cognitive performance. In other words, the cost is high, but mostly invisible until it's not. This isn't about rejecting technology or turning our homes into caves. It's about using what we know, what science has confirmed, to live in closer alignment with our biological design. It's about being intentional with the light we allow in and when. Just as we've learned to manage what we eat, how we move, and where we spend our attention, we can learn to manage how and when we interact with light. One of the most empowering things about this knowledge is how accessible it is. You don't need a new device or an expensive supplement. The sun is free. The ability to dim your lights is already in your hands. The challenge isn't lack of access, it's lack of awareness and consistency. But once you experience the difference, clearer mornings, deeper sleep, steadier energy, it becomes easier to stick with. Perfecting the rhythm of the day isn't about becoming a different person. It's about unlocking the version of yourself that functions best. And very often, that starts not with what you do during the day, but with how you begin it and how you end it, with light. One of the most common mistakes people make when trying to improve their sleep is searching for quick fixes. We live in a culture that wants instant results. One pill, one setting, one hack that solves everything. But real change rarely works that way, especially when it comes to something as complex and biologically grounded as sleep. The goal isn't to trick the body into rest. The goal is to support it with tools that work with its natural systems instead of trying to override them. There's no shortage of noise out there: supplements with vague claims, devices that promise better REM cycles overnight, and endless advice that often contradicts itself. But if you cut through the clutter and look at the research, what actually works is often very simple. And it doesn't come in a bottle or a subscription plan. It comes from understanding how the brain and body prepare for sleep and creating the conditions that allow that process to happen consistently. Start with the nervous system. We spend most of our day in some version of on, focused, reacting, solving problems. But the transition to sleep requires a shift into a very different mode. That doesn't happen just because you lie down. You have to signal to the body that it's safe to slow down. One of the most effective ways to do that is through breath. Controlled breathing, especially slow exhalations, can reduce heart rate, decrease cortisol, and activate the parasympathetic nervous system, the part of the body that says, "You can rest now." This isn't theory. It's been measured, it works, and it can be done anytime, anywhere without equipment. Another powerful lever is temperature. Most people don't realize how sensitive the body is to thermal signals, especially in the hours before sleep. A drop in core body temperature is one of the triggers that helps initiate the sleep process. That's why something as ordinary as a warm shower before bed can be so effective. It heats the skin, and the cooling that happens afterward tells the body it's time to wind down. Keeping the bedroom cool, somewhere between 60 and 67 degrees Fahrenheit, amplifies this effect. It's not about comfort alone. It's biology, and it's one of the easiest tools to apply. Then there's the issue of what we consume. Stimulants like caffeine and alcohol interfere with the body's ability to enter deep, restorative sleep. Even if you fall asleep easily, caffeine, in particular, has a half-life of around 5 to 6 hours. That means a coffee at 4 p.m. can still be active in your system at 10 p.m. It doesn't just keep you awake, it changes the architecture of your sleep. reducing the amount of time you spend in the deeper stages that actually matter. Awareness of timing, not just intake, is critical. Small changes here can lead to dramatically better outcomes. Movement is another key factor. Exercise helps regulate energy and improves sleep quality, but timing matters. Vigorous activity too close to bedtime can be stimulating, but done earlier in the day, it can help establish a clear boundary between periods of high energy and the slower rhythms of evening. Again, it's not about tricking the system, it's about supporting it with input it understands. One of the most underrated tools is consistency. Going to bed and waking up at roughly the same time each day, even on weekends, trains the body to anticipate sleep. That anticipation makes falling asleep faster and improves the quality of the sleep you get. People underestimate how much their bodies respond to patterns. We're rhythmic creatures, and sleep responds to regularity much more than randomness. None of these tools are flashy. None of them promise miracles overnight. But they work because they respect the biology we all share. The most meaningful gains in sleep come not from trying harder, but from being more deliberate, and often it's not about adding more, but subtracting the habits that interfere. Better sleep isn't a luxury, it's a necessity that impacts everything else: mental clarity, physical health, emotional stability, and the ability to do meaningful work. The tools to improve it are already within reach. The challenge isn't availability, it's commitment, and once you experience what real, consistent sleep feels like, not just more hours, but better hours, you stop chasing tricks. You start building habits that last. We're living in an era where technology shapes almost every aspect of how we work, think, and connect. It's helped us solve problems we once thought were unsolvable, scale ideas at unprecedented speed, and communicate across borders instantly. But in this constant momentum, something crucial often gets left behind: recovery. We have tools that track everything from productivity to calories to performance. Yet, for all this capability, we still see rising rates of burnout, poor sleep, and chronic fatigue. The reason isn't that we lack solutions. It's that the very systems we've built for performance often ignore the role of recovery in sustaining it. At its best, technology should make us healthier, not just busier. It should reinforce the rhythms that keep us sharp and rested, not disrupt them. But for that to happen, it needs to be designed and used with intention, because without boundaries, even the smartest tools can work against us. Notifications don't know when our brain is tired. Algorithms don't care if it's 2 a.m. Apps that keep us scrolling don't ask if we've had enough stimulation for one day. The burden falls on us to decide: will we use technology to push harder or to recharge better? Some of the most promising developments in sleep science right now are actually being driven by data. Real-time, personal, and continuous. Wearables can now track sleep stages, measure heart rate variability, detect breathing disturbances, and offer patterns over weeks or months. This kind of information helps people understand their own habits and make small changes that lead to big improvements, not guesses, real feedback. The same device that once just counted steps can now help map the quality of your recovery. But insight alone isn't enough. It's what we do with it that matters. Seeing that your deep sleep is consistently low, for instance, means very little unless it prompts action. Shifting your caffeine intake earlier, adjusting your bedtime, or changing light exposure habits. Technology is valuable when it acts as a mirror, not a distraction. It should help us become more aware of our patterns, not more addicted to them. Recovery also means mental rest, and this is where the challenge becomes more subtle. The human brain was never built to process infinite inputs, yet many of us now reach for a device the moment we wake up and keep it within arm's reach until we fall asleep. The idea of downtime, of doing nothing, is disappearing. But without mental rest, focus fractures, creativity dries up, emotional resilience wears thin, the very things we need to thrive start to fade. Some tools are now being developed to reverse that trend. Dapps that prompt mindfulness instead of mindlessness, devices that dim screens based on circadian rhythm, or settings that filter out blue light in the evening. These aren't gimmicks. They're efforts to align the digital world with our biological needs. But again, they require something from us, the willingness to use them with purpose, not passively. A phone can be a window or a wall. The difference is how you use it. Even in the workplace, there's a growing awareness that constant connectivity isn't synonymous with productivity. More organizations are embracing protected time. No, meeting days, email, free blocks, and digital detox hours. These aren't just workplace trends. They're responses to hard data showing that performance improves when recovery is built into the system. The people doing the best work over the long haul aren't the ones who grind non-stop. They're the ones who have learned how to cycle between intense focus and deep rest, and increasingly, the tools they use support both states, not just one. Sleep, in particular, is where technology has the most potential to assist recovery. But it can also be where it does the most harm. Endless scrolling at night delays melatonin in release. Bright screens confuse the brain's sense of day and night. What might feel like relaxation is actually cognitive overload. And yet, the same devices can also be used to guide breathwork, play calming audio, or signal wind-down routines. The tool hasn't changed, only the intention behind its use. Ultimately, the question we need to ask isn't just, what can this technology do? But what does it do to me over time? If it makes you more anxious, less rested, more distracted, or emotionally drained, then it's not a tool, it's a tax. But if it helps you unplug, monitor your recovery, reinforce sleep habits, and restore energy, then it becomes something more powerful, a partner in sustainable health. Technology isn't going anywhere. It will continue to evolve. The challenge is to ensure that it evolves in a direction that values recovery as much as output. Because performance doesn't come from constant motion. It comes from the right balance between exertion and rest, and in that balance, technology must be an enabler, not a barrier. Most people try to build a great day by focusing on the morning. They talk about routines, cold showers, early workouts, time blocks, and productivity hacks. But the reality is, a great morning doesn't begin when the alarm goes off. It begins the night before. That's when your body and brain do the preparation that no amount of coffee or motivation can replicate. When you sleep well, your ability to think clearly, make decisions, remember important information, and stay emotionally balanced is dramatically improved. It's not just about how many hours you get, it's the quality and timing of those hours that shape everything from your immune response to your creativity. When you don't sleep enough, it's like trying to build a house on sand. Your intentions might be solid, but the foundation can't hold. What many people don't realize is how much control we actually have over the quality of our sleep. It starts with patterns. The decisions you make in the hours before bed have a direct impact on how your brain will function the next day. Your exposure to light, your food, your stress levels, and even the way you think about rest all play a role. If you're constantly jumping from one stimulation to the next, emails, notifications, late night shows, endless scrolling, you're training your brain to stay alert when it should be slowing down. The brain doesn't flip like a switch. It winds down gradually when it's given the right signals. One of the most effective signals is consistency. Going to bed and waking up at the same time, even on weekends, gives your internal clock the ability to regulate everything else. your appetite, your mood, your attention span. That rhythm isn't something you can fake. You have to earn it, and once it's established, it works for you. It makes mornings feel less forced and more automatic. It's also important to understand that good sleep isn't just about rest. It's a time for repair. Your body uses that period to regenerate cells, clean out waste in the brain, and balance hormones that affect your metabolism and immune system. It's essentially your body's maintenance window. If you skip that process, there's a cost. You may not feel it right away, but over time it shows up in how often you get sick, how well you handle stress, how quickly you recover from setbacks. And then there's the cognitive aspect. Memory consolidation, problem solving, pattern recognition. All of these take place during sleep. It's why people often say, "Let me sleep on it." That's not just a saying, it's grounded in neuroscience. During certain stages of sleep, the brain actually replays and reorganizes information from the day, helping you make sense of it and store it more efficiently. So if you're trying to make good decisions or learn new skills, the best thing you can do isn't to push harder, it's to rest smarter. Evening habits play a critical role here. Avoiding heavy meals too late, reducing screen time, and creating a calm, dark environment all signal to the body that it's time to shift gears. Something as simple as reading a physical book instead of watching a screen, or writing down tomorrow's to-do list to clear your mind, can reduce the mental clutter that keeps so many people awake. The goal isn't to force sleep, but to make it the natural next step in your day. There's also a mindset shift involved. For a long time, sleep was viewed as unproductive time, a passive state that took you away from the things you wanted to achieve. But now we understand that it's one of the most productive things you can do. Not in the traditional sense of checking tasks off a list, but in building the capacity to approach the day with clarity, energy, and perspective. If you want to do great work, solve hard problems, or lead effectively, you can't afford to treat sleep like a luxury. It's a necessity. When you build your evening around recovery instead of distraction, you start to see the difference, not just in how you feel, but in how you perform. Your attention sharpens, your reactions slow down less. Your tolerance for frustration increases, and the sense of control over your day returns. So if you're looking to improve your productivity, creativity, or even your relationships, don't just ask what you'll do tomorrow. Ask what you're doing tonight, because the best days are not built in the morning. They're planted the night before, and when you start treating that time with the respect it deserves, everything else starts to align. So, as you think about your goals, your ambitions, the kind of life you want to build, start by asking yourself not what you need to do tomorrow, but how you'll sleep tonight, because that's where momentum really begins. That's where recovery happens, and that's where long-term growth gets its fuel. Perfecting your sleep isn't about chasing some ideal bedtime. It's about aligning your life with how your biology actually works. And when you do, you're not just sleeping better, you're living smarter. The future belongs to those who are well, rested enough to think clearly, move decisively, and act with purpose. Let's not sleep on sleep. Let's master it.